And tonight we have a presentation on the intersection of Highway 7 and 101, which has a lot of beloved businesses there and other things to talk about, like Snuffy's. And I just want to invite you to become a member of the Minnetonka Historical Society. You'll get a newsletter like this with some articles about history of Minnetonka in it. And we have these presentations twice a year, once in the spring and in the fall. And so we're happy that you joined us here tonight. Now I'm going to hand it over to Dorothy, who sets up all our presentations. Dorothy Welch.
You know, for years we've been trying to put together a program about this area. And finally we kind of hit a treasure trove, and we realized that Nancy Countryman and Fred Hanus, who grew up in the area and went to Minnetonka High School, really have all sorts of memories that they can share with us. You know, Excelsior, the town of Excelsior, was known for Excelsior Amusement Park, and it was part of the culture of that particular community. But I don't think many people realize that Minnetonka, in its own way, had a community that had a center for entertainment. And when the people in Minnetonka, in this part of Minnetonka, were available to go to entertainment, one of the places they looked at was the 7 High Drive-In, and Snuffy's Drive-In, and the Lilliput, and the little areas around that community. So tonight we're going to look at the entertainment capital of Minnetonka during the years of the late 1940s through the 60s. And we're so pleased that both Fred and Nancy are here to share their memories, and we're so glad to see so many of you here who we hope will be sharing your memories later as we wrap this up. So let's hear about Minnetonka in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s at the corner of Highway 7 and 101.
Well, when Highway 7 was being built, before that, Clear Springs and Excelsior Boulevard, you could take Clear Springs Road, hook on to Tonkawood, go to Minnetonka Boulevard, and go to the mills if you wanted to. Also at the corner of Clear Springs Road and Excelsior Boulevard was a store. Next to that store also was a spring, where a lot of the farmers or the people that live in the area got water for their animals or for themselves. Then when Highway 7 was built, it divided those two streets off. Now when Highway 7 was built, if you stand at the corner of Tonkawood Road in Woodland and look to the west, you go down the big hill. Then it curves to the south, then it gets through 101, it's up to the high school, it curves back to the north. Do you know why it curves? When they were, State Highway Department came out, tried to find solid ground in that low area, they never found solid ground. So they moved the road to the south. At the same time, when they did that, it took the two Hanus farms and split them in half. My grandpa and my uncle on the south side, my mother and dad on the north side. And if you know today, there is a tunnel or a bridge under Highway 7. The reason why that's there is Amola lived on the north side of, south side of 7 with his house and his barn, but his pastures were on the north side. So he negotiated with the State Highway Department to put a tunnel or a bridge in. Well, today we're using that for our trail system. So that's the reason why the road does bend when you're coming down the big hill. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Nancy, and then she can start from there where she wants to go.
I grew up in a little community called Groveland Assembly Grounds, which is in the village, or now the city of Woodland. And I lived there for 19 years. And then I got married after I'd gone to college, and we moved to Michelle Lane, right behind the high school, which was my old biology field. And then I now live in a little town called Deep Haven. So I've never moved more than 3 miles. And so I can really tell you all about 101, because I'll bet my car has gone up and down 101 more than any of yours, or my bicycle. Now, I worked for Snuffy's Drive-In for 14 years. I really learned how to work. I started out as a car hop when I was 12 years old. Now, I don't think the IRS is going to catch up with me about that 12-year-old thing, but I rode my bike up and down 101. I would never let my grandchildren today ride their bikes up and down 101. But I worked there for 14 years, and the first day that I went to work there, maybe we can show a picture. That's 7 High. They saw it before. Yeah, and that's the Hopkins Snuffies now. So you see this in a lot of publications. It's not 7 and 101. That's where the present, there's the present, that's the old Snuffies. And that was myself hanging out of the window. Now, when I first started working there and I rode my bike, I was given a glass of soapy water and a toothbrush by Ernie Pivick. And some of Ernie's relatives are here tonight. Okay. Some of Ernie's relatives are here tonight, and they'll vouch for this. But I had this glass of soapy water, and I went out to, there was a spot over beyond this car, and right below the sign that gave the prices of the food, well, here's a line right here. Take this line, for instance. Well, he gave me this little glass of soapy water, and he said, Nancy, I'd like you to go out and start and clean the first line. I said, Ernie, I'm 12 years old, and I wouldn't argue with it, being only 12. But that's the way I learned, and that's the way Ernie Pivick kept that drive-in. You could eat off the floors. It was so immaculate. And I learned how to really work so hard. And notice this picture here. This is back, we built Lilliput right back of it, and then that's where Walgreens is today. So you just vision that. But Lilliput was just a fabulous place for children, for adults. We had more fun at that place. This was a very, very, very popular drive-in. And when I started working there were no signal lights on 101 and 7. So envision that, no signal lights. And we had an entrance from over there, and we had an entrance from here on Highway 7. Now, I will tell you briefly, I started as a car hop. We didn't have, there were no roller skates. We just walked. And we walked a long way. And then I became a front where we made all the malts. And we had hard ice cream. We had the best malts in the country. We had Holgren's ice cream, and they came all the time, and we made the best malts there ever was. And then I became a cook, and I haven't cooked since then. No, that's what my husband would tell you. But anyway, that's where I started. I got a good education there. I met a lot of great people, and I'll let Fred take over now, and he can talk a little bit more about his. Oh.
Well, let's go through these pictures, and you can't just tell us.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Let me just tell you, hamburgers were 30 cents back when I was working, and 35 for a cheeseburger, 40 cents for a California. Coleslaw was 15 cents. And that was a lot of money even back then. I started working at Snuffy's when I was 12 years old, and I'm 73. So we go back. And then you can see how the prices started to increase. Now, this little skunk, the reason why Ernie named it Snuffy's is because he was in the service and he had a pet skunk that all the guys sort of loved. And he got out of the service and he decided, I can't think of a better name, Nancy, and I'm going to name it Snuffy's. And that's how it all started. This is the little putt. Here's the old telephone number. We didn't have to, we just do 474-9344. Actually, I had 316 at home many, many years ago. I remember only 3 digits. But you see how he did all these? He made all these up. These were little, this one was a bag that we had on a to-go bag where we'd wrap up the hamburgers and things. Now, we had to really follow these rules because we didn't have enough room in our parking lot and we were always crowded, so there was no loitering. And when you had cute car hops, the guys would come up and sit and sit and sit. So and they had to spend money. Well, I don't recall that I ever had to collect from somebody, but they had to spend at least 50 cents in order to keep the cars there. So remember, we were pretty strict on that. And it really did become a Snuffy Burg country. Everybody loved the Snuffy burgers. And then I would just tell you today that where you see Snuffy's now, at Minnetonka Boulevard and 101. Then there's one in Edina, there's one in St. Paul, and there's one more. That Mike Mueller, who played basketball for Hopkins, good basketball player, bought the rights for the Snuffy's name when Ernie closed the front doors. So that's why Snuffy's is now carried over. It really had nothing to do with each other, except that Mike bought the rights to it. And that's how we have Snuffy's today. Oh, now see, these are some car hops. This is Janie Locken. I mean, how I can remember this is beyond me, but her dad was the biology instructor at Minnetonka High School, Reuben Locken. And we had all the girls, Patty, Jane, and Judy, working at Snuffy's. And I see she's pretty popular with the front and teasing. But I can't tell you all these. That one is Janie over there. But I can't tell you all the girls, I'm sorry.
Does anybody recognize any of them?
No, Ernie isn't in the pictures. I'm sorry. Oh, these are, now this is Ernie's youngest daughter, Ann, and that's David Pivick. And then these were all the fronts. We called the boys that made the malts fronts. And then the car hops were over here. And then the kitchen help was back here, the cooks. And this was all, the girls would love to, we went to pedal pushers. We used to call them pedal pushers, back then. Well, the girls loved it because they could sit up on that deck and get suntan. And they loved to do that. That's an evening, and that's Janie. So I don't know who got all these pictures of Janie, but the next time I see her, I'm going to tease her about it.
To answer that question, there's about 20. All these pictures are on this Facebook Snuffy's Bible. We'll get them all.
Well, here's the one. This one is, we were there when the tornado went through Cottagewood in '65, I believe. Well, I was working that day at Snuffy's, and I had my son with me. And I closed the driving down, told them all to leave, get out of there, or take the back bank. We had a hill when we went down, when it went down to Lilliput. And I said, hit the hill. I then took my son and we started going down Highway 7 because I was trying to run away from it. And we hit the bank. There was a bank over by where the general store is today. And we hit the bank and it went right over us. So that was a scary evening. Very. And there, you see, there are no signal lights up there. So the cars would just stop, and then, if they looked and they could see that there was a way to get across, they would cross Highway 7. I was involved with a very, very serious car accident there, where there were 4 people killed, and there were 2 babies. We had some pine trees on the side of the lot in the front, and 2 of the babies were thrown from the cars. Both of them were killed, and I went to work 7 years later at Tatra Ski Shop, if you remember Tatra Ski Shop, over on Old Highway 12, and some officials from an insurance company came to ask me all about that accident that had happened at 7 and 101 7 years before that. So it hadn't been settled, and it was a real mess. That's just a little piece of history there. This is across the street, and that was DS, or Western Oil and Fuel. Yeah. And that's somebody that's checking her order blank to make sure she's got it right. Great cars. I wish I had a few. Now this was a kitchen. This was a bun warmer up there. We toasted all of our buns. This is the area where we made all the Snuffy burgers, with lettuce and tomatoes and mayonnaise and everything. This was our grill, and I could get 100 hamburger patties on that grill, believe it or not. And then we had the fryers. One fryer, the end fryer, was used strictly for French fries. And the fryer up on top was used for chicken and shrimp. We didn't combine them because you didn't want the chicken and shrimp to get the same taste in those French fries. So we had quite an operation there. And this is Babel. Do you remember Babel? Well, we used more cans of Babel than they can find today. We cleaned and we cleaned and we cleaned. The health inspectors from Minnetonka today would be well proud of how we kept that place immaculately. We had to wear aprons, we had to wear headbands. And you see the line, there were 4 people in that line in order to produce. And then we had the old yellow trays. Before the yellow trays, those had a plastic, a rubber compound on it, so it wouldn't scratch your cars. But before that, we had the old metal trays, and it slipped onto the side of the car. So we really, those are good pictures. See the buns coming back down? You see? Yep. Toasted buns. And then here's our fountain. And now let's go to the next picture here. This is a Hamilton Beach malt mixer. This is the malt mixer that Ray Kroc developed, and he was the owner. He started McDonald's. He started with the Hamilton Beach, and they were the best. And those were the fronts, the boys that were making all the malts.
So those are all pictures, and they have one 8mm film from 1960s on his Facebook website. There's no sound, but it's fun, about a minute long. One of those cars
he had uniforms. Ernie was very generous. He would, both the police from Deep Haven and from Minnetonka used to come to our drive-in all the time, and of course he used it as sort of a dual situation because the policeman got free food, and it was always nice to have the police sitting there, and he liked that. And then he was a Roman Catholic, and he was very proud of his background. And his uncle was the bank president in Hopkins, Mr. Suffolk, and Frank Suffolk, and he would bring the priests from Hopkins or from St. Therese, and they would have a lovely lunch, and they never had to pay. But I remember the police. I knew the police very well. Still, you know, I loved them. But they'd get a call, and they'd honk the horn, and I'd run and take that tray off. Or else, if they couldn't wait for me, they would drop the tray on the drive, and some of them ran over them. But Ernie didn't say anything because he really liked having the police there in the parking lots. Oh. Yeah, now this is, part of this building still remains up there on 7 and 101 where the bank is now. The top is still there, and what we did was they filled in and put they filled in with brick and with wood, and you walk in now like here through there to get into the bank. So basically the footprint is there. This was the latest Snuffy's that they built, and then he sold it, and it was time for him to retire.
Just leave that up there for me
Yeah.
when you're ready.
Yeah.
Well, next to the Putt-Putt Golf was the National Chief grocery store on the same side. Now we're talking about the northwest corner, still talking about the northwest corner. Then farther up is the beginning of Purgatory Creek, where it goes under 101, behind Cub, under Highway 7 into Purgatory Park. Now on the southwest corner was Shell gas station, owned by the Rettinger brothers in Long Lake. Next to Rettinger brothers was Ralph Shoba family. Then next to Ralph Shoba was Dick Canarza, and I'm heading south now. And at the corner of Excelsior Boulevard and 101 was Derzak lived there. Then if you went farther down 101, got the corner of Hanus Road and 101, on the southwest corner was Clear Spring School. That's one of the first schools in the area. My dad would walk from Clear Springs Road and before Highway 7, he'd walk to school every morning. He told me in the school they had a pot-belly stove. So the children in the school would put their sandwiches on top of the pot-belly stove so they would thaw out in the wintertime so they could eat them at noon. So it was the boys' job to keep the pot-belly stove going, and the women's job was to keep the school clean. Then if you went to the southeast side, it was really vacated for quite a while before 7 High Drive-In came in. It was not very well used until they came. I remember 7 High Drive-In, it was very busy Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I can also remember, you have a picture of doing the DDT? Anyhow, they they would drive by down by the creek with a truck spraying DDT to kill the mosquitoes. Otherwise, if you didn't do that, you wouldn't stay there very long because there was a lot of mosquitoes coming off the creek. And it was like a very busy place. There's no doubt about it for many, many years. Then if you went on the northeast corner, like she said, it was a Western gas station. Then there was a go-kart racetrack, about a third of a mile or a quarter mile long. Then next to that, as I'm going north, is Ralph Schuba's had a farm there where the bank is today on the north side, northeast side where the bank is there today. He had a building there, maybe 30 by 40, where he stored all his crates and his boxes and stuff that he picked for celery and cabbage. He'd take it to either the farmer's market or to the store. Then as you went farther north, where Somerset Knolls is in Saddlewood, there was a great big high hill. On top of that hill was a windmill. And they would move a handle on the windmill. It would pump water into a big tank for the animals. I remember my dad, he rented that property from Mr. Griswold, who lived in the corner of Ridgewood Road and 101. He owned the property. My parents rented from him. Now, you have to realize that we're talking, back early in the 1900s, really. I'm talking early history when I'm talking about that. You have to realize my grandparents came to Minnesota about 1872, 1873. My grandpa came across the boat when he was 2 years old on the Hanus side, and my grandmother was born here. And you have to realize how much settlement was done by the Bohemian people. Just get out and drive Minnetonka. What do you see? Pica, Bren, Dvorak, Felto, Chostek, Kokish, Patana, Hanus. It's all Bohemian people. That's where their farm was. They named the road after their farms. Also, you have to realize that the South Shady Oak Road area and South Shore Boulevard, all the way going down Shady Oak Road, it was really Bohemian family. I have to give you a little history back there. There was a church at the corner of Bren Road and Shady Oak, the first church in the area. That all the Catholics, Lutherans, Protestants, all went to that one church. Today there's two cemeteries, one on the east side and one on the west side. That's where that's where the first church was. And that was all Bohemians talking, their sermon was Bohemian. Then they end up changing Bohemian and English later on. Then the Catholics went to St. Joe's and Hopkins, and then the Lutherans went to John Huss Church, which now today is Faith Lutheran Church. My parents were involved in getting high school Minnetonka where it is. My mother was very prominent when she came to helping people on the city council and also on the school board. On the school board. We were out in the field, I think it was end of June of 1948. And it was my mother and dad, us three boys, and we always had two hired men working for us. We had enough help, we had to have hired men, because we once farmed in Minnetonka between 250, 300 acres of land in Minnetonka, believe it or not. And we had 32 milking cows, a dry barn with about 20. We had 6 horses, 5 big tractors. We would make between 5,000 and 6,000 bales of hay every summer. We filled 2 silos, 35-foot silos with 6-foot pits in the silo for the cows. We raised all that corn and all that hay. So anyhow, like I said, I got back to end of June, I think it was 48. We were out in the field, all of us working. down the hill comes two men all dressed up in suits. We knew one, but I can't remember who the person was, but the other one we did not know. So he introduced himself to, I'm Mr. William Nielsen. My mother didn't say a word because she, like I said, she worked for the campaign for Butterworth, Ilias, and all those people. Plus, she helped the school board in elections. So then he finally says, I'm William Nielsen, superintendent of school. Mother says, what? I can still remember her saying today the word what. And she says, yeah, I was just voted by the school board 2 weeks ago, a new superintendent of schools. My mother did all the financials for my dad. My dad and my mother were very unique. They never argued. My dad took care of all the farming end of it. My mother took care of all the gardening part. She set the prices for the tomatoes, sweet corn. I'll tell you this, my mother sold in Minnetonka Mill starting in 1932, the roadside stand. And she sold until 1995 on Highway 7. So she put a lot of years in. And she liked to talk to the people. I mean, she'd open your door and talk about politics or anything like that. So he said, I'm Mr. William Nielsen. I'm a new superintendent of schools. Gladys, I hear you're building houses. Yeah, I got a house I'm building down on Tonkawood Road. Can I see it? So she took him down there, and he says, yeah, I'll take it for a year. End up being 10 years. So a few months later, the Excelsior and DePaven merged to Minnetonka High School. At the same time, we had Clear Springs, Minnetonka, Groveland, DePaven, also as elementary schools. He says, yeah, do you know of any farmer in Minnetonka that's ready to sell? She says, yeah, Rudy Koke's farm. And sure enough, she introduced him to Rudy Koke and helped negotiate the sale. Like Nancy Countryman said.
So here's the high school?
Yeah, that's the high school.
Close-up of it in 1960.
Yeah, the opening of the school is in the fall of 1952. And I was first 3-year class there. So I started in 52 in Minnetonka High School. Now, like Nancy said, you know, she didn't go more than a couple miles from home. Well, I've only gone 2 blocks from where I was born. So, and the house that I was born was built in 1865. It's still standing today. How we know that is that when my parents remodeled the house, we found newspaper in the walls insulation. So that's how we found out. And all 3 of us boys were born at that house. We did not go to hospital. We were born in that house. So I could talk, you know, a lot about the history of the Hanus family, but I don't want to get that far into it.
Is there anything more about the drive-in that you want to say?
Well, I was telling Dorothy a little bit about the drive-in. You know, if you had a station wagon, you were really popular. Now, I'm confessing a whole lot here tonight. But we would have 4 people in the car, right? Well, there were really 8. Because in the back, we would put down the blankets and we would get 4 more in there. And we'd go through the gate. And then we would split the cost between the 8 of us instead of just 4. I mean, that was probably not, I don't think my parents knew that I did that or I was a part of it, but I had their car and we did that and we got by with it. We also got by with, when we would see the 7 High Theater, they had their marquee on the side facing Highway 7. Oh yeah, that's the only picture that we have of it. But that picture was taken from the Snuffy's parking lot. Now, you can see the cars and everything, and we're sitting now on that front deck and we're thinking, let's see. Ronald Reagan is playing with Judy Garbo, and let's see, how could we change that marquee? And we would go and change the marquee maybe not the kind of movie that you would like to go see, but we would do that periodically, just for the fun. I mean, that was the most we did that I got in trouble with. But, huh? Oh yeah, see, and these are out of a book that we found, some of the movies that they would show, and it was big. I mean, there was a Navarre Theater, that was a competition. There was the Lucky Twins, the Starlight. I mean, you know, that was big time stuff. That was our nights out. And like somebody said, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday were great nights to go to the drive-in theater. And there is a picture that we have someplace. Oh, yeah. Death of a gunfighter. Well, you can visualize how we could change that. And with Elvis Presley down below, trouble with the girls. But anyway, you can see those are, and we would get in very reasonably. But there was a picture of the spraying, somewhere we had it, of the DDT. Oh, you remember those? Those of you, there are some of you here that are old enough to remember those things.
You would hang those speakers on your window and turn the speaker up. We would sit down on the cement slab outside and just nice fresh air when we did the same thing. We would bring in 4 or 5 of us. We had 4 or 5 in the trunk, so I know what Nancy's talking about. We did the same thing.
And we were both elected to the Minnetonka City Council. Oh yeah, that was very common. People would take a blanket and you know, there's a, all right,
There he is.
Go back one.
Yeah, there's a spraying machine.
there's a spraying machine. Well, you know what? You know, we all inhaled it.
You ain't a kid.
And, you know, you had no choice, and somebody asked me tonight, do you think the cheeseburgers and the malts got it? I said, definitely they did.
So
So,
you
I
go
mean,
back one, Bill, please. There, that's the one that she was talking,
Yeah.
with the kids
came
right
straight
there.
up. And the kids would run into it.
And it was very, very strong. I mean, boy, if you didn't close your window in your car, you had a hard time watching the rest of the movie because
Right.
it was so strong. I have to also add, after Highway 7 was built, we end up with 4 stands on Highway 7. We had a stand by Tonkawood Road and 7 on the south side. My grandpa and my uncle had a stand on the north side down by Saddlewood, where it is today. Then up by Market Street was Kokish and Brum's Market. And we did very well, us 4 families selling products. We did very well, especially Saturdays and Sundays. And I remember we would bring an 8 by 16 wagon to the stand on Highway 7. We'd have 96 halves of tomatoes, number 2s. We would sell them all in one day. And we sold a lot of corn. Man, we sold a lot of corn. And we sold a lot of raspberries. We had as high as 6.5 acres of raspberries, picking over 100 crates of raspberries, 24 boxes to a case. And we sold them to Bob's Produce Ranch in Fridley, Lund's, Barley's, Super Value Warehouse, and Red Owl Warehouse. You know, plus we sold at the stands. But then we also had a lot of sweet corn. I mean, I think, and I don't want to brag, but I think Hanus's corn was well recommended back when we had corn. I mean, I know Cub told me, because we sold corn to Cub, when he put the Hanus name on the corn, his sales raised 3% just like that. So I don't know if it was Hanus or what it was, but, you know, and my parents were very fortunate. They came when the time was where kids of 12, 13, 14, 16 were looking for work. Today, you couldn't get that. You couldn't make them pick 7 days a week raspberries until 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You know, I mean, it wouldn't be today. They hit the right time for their business. There's no doubt about it. And like I said, you know, they were very fortunate, and they were, like I say, they were involved with politics. They were not elected, but they were involved in politics. And like I said, William Neal's the superintendent of schools. My mother picked that location out and helped negotiate the sale. And she did a lot of, she helped start Bennett Park. The Hanus family started Bennett Park. And we're still in fundraisers, and we're still on different committees.
Okay, now let's go to the Cub food pictures. Yeah, he lives in Deep Haven. He happens to know and knew these nuns.
Really?
Their names, and we have those, and he brought them tonight. And if you could just tell me, so that I could, because I had a hard time reading your writing, and you would have a hard time reading my writing. But here, why don't you just tell the microphone your names, if you would.
Okay, I'm Jim LaHaye. Okay, going from the left, Sister Mary Flora, Sister Mary Gregory, then Sister Mary Rosari, she was a principal at St. Therese, and Sister Mary Catherine, and Mary David.
Thank you very much. Now so they had, there was a tournament going on. It was St. Therese versus St. John's. I think that was it. Just remember, it's where Walgreens is today.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, across the street, we had the Gardener, and we had the go-kart race track. And honestly and truthfully, I don't think, with today's rules and regulations about building, that they would probably be allowed to put a Cub Foods in there today. When I was working at Snuffy's during those 14 years, it was all peat across the street, peat. And when peat starts to burn, it doesn't stop burning. You know, it's hard to put out. And all that property was, and this was the day that way back when one of the very first hot air balloons, this was with Arnie Haig and the group kicking off the groundbreaking for the present Cub Foods. And then I got these pictures out of Arnie's office that still is there at Cub, and
There's Arnie right there.
Arnie right here. And then his son-in-law is right behind Dick, and his wife, Arnie's wife is right there, and these are his children. And then this is the head of Cub. And that was a big day for Arnie, and a big day for Minnetonka, because I will say that we are very fortunate to have had that family and Arnie Haig be so generous and so community-minded that if I don't know of anybody else, honestly and truthfully, I can say that's been as generous to every person that's ever walked into that store. If there's been a problem with not having enough food to put on your own table, Arnie would take care of that. Brian Coonley takes care of it today. He learned that from Arnie. And I really consider his friendship very important to my life. He was just a very special person. And there he is with his food. This was his produce manager up there at the top. He was a great guy.
Yeah, what's his name? I sold to him. What was his name?
He's just so fantastic.
Was it John? Was it John or Jim? Jim.
I think
Jim
it's
Hoban.
Jim.
Jim
Jim
Hoban.
Hoban.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nancy.
that's
Nancy. That's Jim Hoban.
Right.
We sold a lot of produce to Cub. Don't realize Cub, before it was started, they own the store at the corner of Minnetonka Boulevard and 101, and they also own the store in Glen Lake
Right.
before they came here at Cub. And like Nancy says, they do donate a lot of stuff to the community. There is no doubt about it. They are, they are great. And then Arnie, like I say, Arnie Hagan and Jim Holman, we sold a lot of produce and vegetables to the Cub through Jim. Oh, huh?
What year? Let's see, I would say that one picture that with the, looked like it was 75, it said back then,
I'd say about that, 75, 76.
75, 76 in that era.
Huh? You think so that late? No, it was older than that. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. He worked with the right person.
Huh? Tassel corn?
That's great. Yes. Oh, okay, and then I was able to get these pictures from Gail Ballas. Gail is the sister and part of the Wortman family that had the Gardenier. Now, this was on part of the parking lot that is now Cub, and it faced towards 101, and it was very, very successful. I bought a lot of stuff there. I mean, I had them come and do my whole house on Michelle Lane. The outside of it, they did a good job. Now, this picture was taken May of 1971, and as you know, we have another gem in the city of Minnetonka that I think deserves a mention. I don't know how many of you have ever been really involved with retail to the point where you owned a store, but you have in Minnetonka the finest store where people come from all over, and that's the general store in Minnetonka. It is one incredible store. I worked over at the Minneapolis Gift Mart for 25 years, and I can tell you that she has one honor after another for that store. So Gail and her brother, they all graduated from Minnetonka, and they had this business called the Gardenier. And actually Gail's father started it. And then they had 4 children. So we have those pictures, and I think that's terrific.
There's your Kokish market. Don't forget, back in those days, there was 4 stands along Highway 7.
That's what they did with the pumpkin.
Yeah.
Now, in order to do that, Fred, did they have to scratch that on the pumpkin when it was very young?
No, well, you can do that.
Do that the day of your sale?
Yeah.
Carve it right in.
Well, there's the Kokish in the audience. He could talk a lot about his family, too.
Mr. Kokish, why don't you stand up? Oh, yeah, both of you. Both of you. Stand up there, Kokishes. Yeah?
Can you come up and tell us some of the stories? Louis, tell us a story.
Yep. Yep.
Right.
Are you Louis? You're Louis, okay. Okay. What's that?
It was a drive-in. Oh, golf
That's right, it was. It was, you're right.
We didn't get any pictures of that. Do you have any? Does anybody have any pictures of that? Well, the mini golf. No, that's not the same thing?
No, no, it was
Okay.
different, it was different.
Okay.
That's what I was,
A lot of marijuana.
that's what I was referring to in the corner of Clear Springs Road and Excelsior Boulevard, there's a little store, that's what you're referring to. Yeah.
The aquarium shop.
That water was polluted, they put the pipe down into the creek.
Like Nancy was saying, crossing 101 and 7, we used to call it Suicide 7. I mean, it was bitter to get across that intersection. We could be out in our fields, we could hear the ambulance or the police cars coming down the hill because we knew where they were going. They were going to 101 and 7. I mean, there was no doubt about it. It was really a very tough corner to cross. It really
When
was.
did they put in the stop signs? Was, the stop light? Is that after after Minnetonka High School was built?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They
I would,
built the high school and then realized they needed a light.
yeah, well, they built Minnetonka High School, opened up in the fall of 52. Okay.
And the lights came after that.
In my class of 55 was 133 kids in our class. So we were a small school.
And our class had, we were in 59, and it was 230. And we had a good-sized class. Exactly what I was paid.
Tell.
You know, you could make a comparison with babysitting or car hopping. And it was about the same. But Ernie paid me 25 cents an hour. And I thought I was,
25 too much.
wait a minute, did you hear that? 25 is too much? No, I say, but he let me keep all my tips. Now, the tips on the 4th of July weekend, I can go back because my dad kept all the records. I was only 12 years old, so I could not take orders. I could not, I could only take orders out to the car, put them on, and take the money and give it to the car hop. Or take the trays off. Most of the time I was just a runner and a gopher taking the trays off. And I would have to, we had little tip jars, but they were solo cups. And they would have their name. They could, write their names on it. And then I'd have to put the money in each tip jar. Well, that went on until the 4th of July weekend. And then I worked 3 solid days. And Ernie said, you have to put Nancy's name up in a cup and you have to split your tips with her. Because she's running, and I did run. I was thin. I really worked hard. And I made $125 on that weekend for 3 days in tips. Now, that was like, farmers and mechanics looked at that little deposit and said, wow, what did she do, rob our Lower Street Bank or what? But I made $125 in that weekend. So I can remember that. That was good money. Oh, first of all, I couldn't work 3 days in a row today. And run like that. And plus the fact I had to ride my bike all the way home. I was exhausted. Oh, that was fun.
What other memories do you have or questions?
Well, when my dad was young, he would go in the wintertime and trap squirrels, raccoons, or the spring, and he would skin them, put them on a board, and then that was his pin money. He would sell the furs to downtown, believe it or not. When when our two hired men in the wintertime didn't have much to do, they would go and grub out trees, because you got to realize Minnetonka was a very, very wooded city. And a lot of the farmers couldn't find enough area to plow because there's too many trees. So our two hired men always had to go in the wintertime and dig out trees, cut the trees down, and then dig out the roots with a grub hoe so they can plow the field next spring. A lot of that wood went downtown to the open pit of kitchens that they made, restaurants downtown, open kitchen restaurants. That's where all of my dad's wood went to. My dad was very, when it comes to making money, he knew how to do it. I mean, every angle he could do, he did it.
Right, 7 High, yeah. I called, I really did some calling when I got this call from Dorothy. I called, Bert Suplee was the owner of the 7 High, and he did he had most of the money in behind it. And then he had a son-in-law, Dick Gibson, who, Bert Suplee is long gone, but I thought I could get a hold of Dick Gibson, and then the 7 High Barbers, he lives out on the golf course at Island View, and I tried to get him, and he was at some tournament. So I feel badly because I wanted to get all that information for you. There were a lot of good people in there. Dana's was in there, you remember, and yeah, and they had a great dry cleaners, and they had wonderful
Hardware store too.
yeah, hardware. It was great. Great, and that travel agent used to live right next door to me, up on Michelle Lane. And he did very well. He was actually a Republic airline employee, started the airline play. I mean and they just had a crackerjack mainline travel. You remember mainline travel? Ooh, the memory is good. But I can't tell you all that. I wish I could. It was a great place. I mean, they had a Chinese place in there, Mr. Wong. Country Buffet.
Oh, Country Buffet.
What? Oh yeah. What was that? I used to like that one too.
What was that?
The independent bookstore.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And then Suplee had the garden supply hardware part of it too, because Ben Franklin. I tried to get him to lower his prices to buy lawnmowers for Bennett Park, and he didn't budge. But so I went to Kramer's True Value, and they would literally donate the machines to us. So you had great people, and Mr. Suplee was pretty hard to work with. He was pretty tough. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I lived here all my life, so I had to negotiate a few things. But so I can tell you the good, and I can tell you the bad. Mostly all good, though.
Yep.
Correct. Correct.
There was a Red Owl store there.
Right. And wasn't there a Red Owl also in Excelsior?
Yes, in Excelsior, was a Red Owl.
Yeah.
Right in the corner of
Right, near where Kowalski's is going in now.
19th and
Yeah.
Water.
Yeah. Correct. You're right. Right.
Well, National Tea was the first one. Yeah. That was same time as Snuffy and the golf and the putt-putt golf.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you all would think about maybe doing something up on Minnetonka Boulevard and 101, because there are a lot of great history things there. That would be maybe your next down the road a bit, you know. Oh, did you? I'm sorry, I didn't. Ty Abel's,
Diable's Corner Club.
and then McCarthy, huh? Deep Haven Drug and all those.
By the way, how many years ago was it that you did that excellent presentation on Bennett? So that's online, you can go to our website and click on any of these past presentations. We really appreciate the city of Minnetonka recording all, and this one as well. Just push one button and it'll play for an hour.
Well, I'm still at Bennett Park, so they can't get rid of me. And but I'd like to say a real thank you because I had the opportunity. I lived here in Minnetonka for 38 years, and Mayor Anderson is in the audience tonight, and with Fred Hanus, and the three of us were on the city council together, and I can honestly tell you that we did a lot of work, and I think we performed very well for the entire city and for all of you. A lot of things happened during that time, and so I'd like to.
Yes.
This is just an observation. I noticed somebody picture showed,
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
they showed telephone numbers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
They had the three numbers.
Yes.
When we moved out here 57 years ago, my number was 105.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when was that
Times have
changed?
changed.
Well, I was 316 when I was growing up. You know, we had a party line.
This is the three first numbers.
I know, but all you had to do was dial 316. I mean, this was, yeah, right,
And then Liberty 5 gave way to 374.
right. There you go.
Well, Liberty 5 is now 545.
Right.
I'm sure that there are other stories that you will think of, and if you can, we would love to hear them. Perhaps you can put something on our webpage where people can write in. Yes,
I have a question.
yes.
We've heard that the property along Ridgewood Road, where we had built just west of 101, had during the Depression, people came out there and kind of squatted and raised salary. Does anybody know anything about
Where was that?
Near Ridgewood Road.
on Ridgewood Road, where the swampy area is across from where the golf course was?
Oh,
Well, Ralph Schuba had a salary and cabbage farm where the bank is today on 101, where west.
across the road by the Ridgewood Church.
Keep
Yeah.
going toward Grays Bay, and you pass the bank on your right and look to your left at Ridgewood Road. In that direction.
I bet you that was the Fushima family. They lived there for many years on Ridgewood Road. Fushima family, I bet you that's who it was. They had roughly about 22 acres in there.
Well, I'm so grateful that so many of you made a point of coming